Schaefer is the host of WNYC's New Sounds. You can see his full roundup of the week in music at newsounds.org.
I ain't got no plan B.
Marketplace is next on WNYC. We'll have more All Things Considered at 7 p.m. It's 52 degrees. It's mostly cloudy right now in New York City, a moment before 6:30.
Support for WNYC comes from New York Blood Center. Every 2 seconds, someone needs blood. Donating takes less than an hour of time, and up to 3 lives can be saved. Appointment information and more is available at nybc.org.
WNYC, independent journalism in the public interest. 93.9 FM and AM 820. NPR News and the New York Conversation.
Marketplace is supported by Progressive Insurance, providing direct car insurance rates side by side with other insurance carriers. Customers can see rates and find an option that works for their needs. Now that's Progressive. Learn more at progressive.com.
Today on the program, the demand for oil, crypto, and a new player in sports. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Fidelity. A dedicated Fidelity advisor can help create a wealth plan for a full financial picture. Investment minimums apply. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC.
In Portland, Oregon, I'm Rima Jerez in for Kai Rizdal. It is Monday, April 3rd. Good to have you along. We're going to start with a story about supply and demand. Over the weekend, the oil market got a big jolt when the oil producers cartel, OPEC Plus, made a kind of surprise announcement, you could say. It announced that starting next month, it'll cut oil production by more than 1 million barrels a day. And so with that, with a tighter supply looming, oil prices across the board jumped nearly 6%. So that's the deal with the supply. But now, what about the demand? Marketplace's Justin Ho tells us what that looks like.
There's no debate that oil demand is going to grow this year.
It's just the rate of that growth that is in question.
Matt Smith at the data and analytics firm Kepler says a lot of that question comes down to China, the world's biggest oil importer. As its economy has reopened, China's been demanding more oil. But so far, Smith says, not much more.
People were expecting multiple millions of barrels per day of demand growth coming through from them, and we're just not seeing that.
Rising interest rates in the U.S. and Europe could affect oil demand too, says Tom Sang, who teaches about the energy industry at Texas Christian University.
And that is the other side of this coin, fears of potential recession.
So if U.S. and European consumers demand less oil, could growth in China bail the market out? Sarah Vakshuri, founder of SVB Energy International, says no.
Chinese recovery and return to the market is not going to add that much demand to offset economic slowdown in U.S. and Europe.
OPEC members have an incentive to boost prices since their economies depend on oil revenue. But Amy Myers-Jaffe, who teaches the geopolitics of energy at NYU, says they can't raise them too much.
This trade-off between what kind of oil price does an individual nation need if they're an oil exporting nation and the level at which the global price needs to be to prevent a shaky economy. There's a conflict between those two sets of numbers.
In other words, if oil prices rise more, a recession's even more likely. I'm Justin Ho for Marketplace.
It is a big week for jobs numbers. Tomorrow we have JOLTS, which is the Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey. That tells us how many positions employers are trying to hire for, how many people quit jobs recently. And Friday, we'll get the unemployment rate for March. But today, we are focusing on which cities have particularly hot labor markets. Because as we've been telling y'all, the labor market is strong right now. And a new analysis from the Wall Street Journal and Moody's Analytics found that among bigger cities, Austin and Nashville top the list. Marketplace's Samantha Fields has more.
All politics is local, so the saying goes. Well, the same is true of job markets. And in 2022,
the big picture story is just how persistent the strength of the Sun Belt in particular has been.
Adam Kamens at Moody's Analytics says that trend started before the pandemic.
And by most measures, those have remained the strongest performing economies in the U.S.
Of the 10 hottest city job markets, as ranked by Moody's and the Journal, 9 were in the South, in Tennessee, Texas, Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina. Daniel Zhao at Glassdoor says the rise of remote work has been a big factor.
As people have been able to move to some of these areas, the increased spending that they are bringing into the local economy means that those local employers, like retailers or restaurants, need to actually hire new workers in order to meet that demand.
In a bunch of the cities with hot job markets, much of the hiring has been happening in restaurants, hospitality, and tourism.
Industries that don't necessarily rank very high on employee satisfaction or wages.
That's one reason Catherine Ann Edwards at the Rand Corporation says we should always take these kinds of lists with a grain of salt.
These markets being good or bad in general don't make them good or bad for you in particular. If Nashville is the hottest labor market, that's great.
But she says that doesn't necessarily mean it's hot in your field. I'm Samantha Fields for Marketplace.
Wall Street today, a little mixed. We'll have the details when we do the numbers. We've been reporting on this show about some of the knock-on effects of the banking debacle or situation, whatever you want to call it. And right now, we are going to take a look at what the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and all that ensued has meant for crypto. As of today, the price of a single Bitcoin has rallied to just over $28,000. That is approaching double its value at the end of last year, which I should remind you was not a good year for Bitcoin or most other cryptocurrencies. You'll remember we saw a string of major crypto bankruptcies, most notably for exchange FTX back in November. Marketplace's Lily Jamali explains this turnaround.
It's pretty clear right when you walk into the bagel exchange on Alhambra's Main Street that it's not your average bagel shop. One of the first things you see is a machine that sells Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Owner Ryan Natividad says you can pay for your schmear with cash, credit, or crypto, and not just Bitcoin and the other big ones.
We accept Litecoin, Matic. Someone paid with ApeCoin the other day.
Natividad also has a giant stock ticker mounted to the wall above 4 TV screens playing financial news and a live stream on Twitch. Making a matcha green tea latte, Natividad says he paid for this place from his own crypto winnings, and he's sticking with it.
I still believe in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I believe it's going to be around for a while.
He says the banking crisis is a big reason why crypto is having a moment right now.
There's a lot of bad news going around. It's just like everyone's don't know where to put their money.
Bitcoin, the standard bearer of crypto, came out of a period when bad financial news was the norm, the Great Recession. The cryptocurrency came into being in January 2009 after a year of major financial failures. This first wave of bank failures since then is a big test for crypto, says David Yermak at NYU's Stern School of Business.
Many of the larger banks appear to be vulnerable. Governments have not been particularly successful at bailing them out and shoring up public confidence. And this is exactly the kind of dynamic that the creators of Bitcoin were trying to play into.
And there's some validation in this moment, says Sheila Warren, CEO of the industry group Crypto Council for Innovation.
I think people are really feeling like this is what we've been talking about for so long, guys. So I do think there is a quiet kind of recognition of that.
At the same time, many crypto enthusiasts and investors worry that regulators are trying to keep money from escaping the traditional banking system right now. Entrepreneur Adam Jackson is founder of Cambrian Asset Management, a cryptocurrency hedge fund, which he launched in 2017.
There certainly seems to be a concerted effort of, closing the exit ramps, closing the doors on crypto.
Jackson points to the regulatory clampdown that's intensified lately. Late last month, the world's largest crypto exchange, Binance, was sued by the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, and Coinbase said it was put on notice about potential charges from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. These developments have only added to the view some have that the financial system's old guard is coming after crypto. People tend to look for information that validates how they already view the world, says American University law professor Hillary Allen.
I could see how someone who very much wants to believe that crypto is the successor to traditional finance might interpret what has happened over the last few weeks as confirming that crypto will take over.
But they shouldn't, she says, because while the latest banking crisis has shown that there are definitely problems in traditional finance,
I think those problems are replicated and exacerbated in the crypto system.
Back at the Bagel Exchange, Ryan Natividad is having one of his regular chats about crypto with Richard Valenzuela, who owns the bar next door.
I come in here and make fun of him all the time.
Valenzuela says even after all their talks, crypto makes no sense to him.
It's like, how could something with no intrinsic value appreciate so much, right? I don't get that.
A lot of people really don't get it, but crypto seems to be rallying anyway, as many wait to see what's next for tech and the larger economy. In Alhambra, California, I'm Lily Jamali for Marketplace.
You know those lists you see? You know, the ones celebrating self-made millionaires and the richest people in America? They speak to our fascination as a country with people going from a little to a lot. You know, the classic rags to riches storyline. But what those narratives tend to leave out is that many of those people, if not most of them, were already well off when they began their careers. Alyssa Court is the executive editor of the Economic Hardship Reporting Project, and that is one of the many points she makes in her latest book, Bootstrapped, Liberating Ourselves from the American Dream. Alyssa, welcome to the program.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you.
So your book, it challenges an idea at the heart of our national narrative, which is, you know, that individual success, making it without the help of anyone, is not only an achievable thing, but, you know, something we should strive for. Tell me about the significance of this narrative and why you push back on it.
Well, I think we need to go back to the beginning, which is this idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and the idea of the self-made man, which were coined roughly 2 years apart. So this is the 1830s. Boots were really important in the 19th century. You know, to work, you had to have them. They were a real indicator of where you were in the pecking order. If you're wealthy, you had someone who could help you put them on, literally, or you had a machine to put them on. If you're a working man, you were struggling to pull them up every day and you really needed to, you know, have them on your feet. So pulling yourself over your bootstraps became, over time, this symbol of getting ahead in this country all on your own steam. And it's like this toxic mythology or folk psychology that controls a lot of people's inner lives, our economy, our policy choices. Yeah.
So this idea of bootstrapping, we have internalized it for decades, and you write about how it was introduced by people like Horatio Alger, Ayn Rand, you even mentioned Laura Ingalls Wilder, you know, in The Little House on the Prairie. How did these kind of cultural figures reinforce the value of self-reliance?
Yeah, so Laura Ingalls Wilder and her daughter were both, I'd say, conservative libertarians, and they plotted out this biographical, you know, series of novels as a retort to Franklin Delano Roosevelt and the New Deal. I loved it as a child. My daughter loved it. I write about this in the book. But at the same time, it's hard to forget that all of these families benefited so much from societal largesse, yet were obsessed with asserting how individualistic they were. And they were using the books as propaganda, basically.
I know you call it a little house of propaganda, which I thought was really funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's connect this to public policy. At one point in the book, you coined a term that really stuck with me, and that is the dystopian social safety net. What is that that you're referring to, and how does self-reliance get us to that point?
Yeah, I mean, if we have a country where the social welfare state is much more fragile than, say, other advanced industrialized countries, right? You have people then relying on this ragtag network of nonprofits, volunteers, crowdfunding, sometimes it can be a very beautiful thing. Sometimes it's like your neighbor's helping you. And I write about the power of that. Mm-hmm. But often it's, people having to crowdfund their medical expenses, or that incredible thing that I think it happened a few years ago when teachers, there was a giveaway I write about in the book where they threw dollars on a skating rink, and all these teachers went and grabbed the dollars and started. To me, that was like the visual version. I was like, when I was watching, I was like, that's the dystopian social safety net if it could be a TikTok video. It was so exquisitely horrible.
So twisted.
So twisted, but that's what it is, right? And that's the thing that we need to also avoid, which is that, there's a few bright spots and they're just individual, right? Because we can't think more collectively about having more networks that actually function.
So let's talk about where we go from here. You proposed a lot of changes, and many of them are extensions, I think, of what we've seen over the last several years in response to the pandemic. If you could talk about that a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I reported on a lot of different forms of a new American dream is what I called it, but it includes things like workers' co-ops, mutual aids, participatory budgeting, which are, kind of citizens getting involved in their local budgets. But it's also, different kinds of philanthropy. And there are people like the Patriotic Millionaires or Solidaire, and they even have said they want to liberate wealth, which I thought was interesting use of language.
And, if this bootstrap narrative is such a part of our DNA, can we get rid of it completely? I mean, should we?
Well, that's the thing. People are like, well, I worked hard, you worked, and, I had to look into myself when I was writing this book, because there are parts of me that have been susceptible to, I wouldn't say the self-made narrative exactly, but to the drive yourself and achieve and accomplish at any cost. But that for me, psychologically, it's been really actually revelatory to be able to see things as kind of attribution, to be able to think of the people who've helped me do something like write a book or create this organization, which I've now run for almost 10 years. There's possibilities that avail themselves once you start to look at this differently and you see things as more community-based.
Alyssa Quart is the executive director of the Economic Hardship Reporting Project. Her newest book is Bootstrapped, Liberating Ourselves from the American Dream. Definitely recommend you check it out. Alyssa, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much.
Coming up.
And most recently, No Time to Die, $47 million in tax relief.
That's a big break. But first, let's do the numbers. The Dow Jones gained 327 points, almost 1%, to end at 33,601. The Nasdaq was off 32 points, 0.25%, to close at 12,809. The S&P 500 rose 15 points, 0.4%, to finish at 4124. We talked earlier about cuts in oil production. Meanwhile, Chevron added 4.1%. ExxonMobil moved up almost 6%, and Marathon Oil surged nearly 10%. Extra Space Storage dropped 5.1%. The firm is set to acquire smaller rival Life Storage in a $12.7 billion deal that will create the nation's largest storage facility by number of locations. Life Storage grew 3.5%. Bond prices rose. The yield on the 10-year T-note fell to 3.41%. You're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by the United States Postal Service, offering postage stamps for purchase at more than 40,000 supermarkets, drugstores, office suppliers, and wholesale clubs. And by Domo, the data experience platform innovator that unites IT's need for governance and business users' need for access. With Domo, companies get agile data experiences that spark the curiosity that underpins business impact. More at domo.com.
WNYC is supported by Foreman School, a Connecticut co-ed college prep school dedicated to empowering students with language-based learning differences and executive function deficits, hosting an open house on Friday, April 21st. Information at foremanschool.org.
On the next Brian Lehrer Show, we'll continue our series of call-ins for this week's intersection of Easter, Ramadan, and Passover. We had one for Christians on our last show. This time it'll be for Muslims. Same questions: how your religion informs your identity and ethics, and is it different from or the same as your parents? And we'll have live coverage of the hours leading up to Donald Trump's arraignment. The Brian Lehrer Show, weekdays at 10 a.m. on WNYC.
You're listening to Marketplace on WNYC. In the 7 o'clock hour of All Things Considered, former President Donald Trump arrived in New York this afternoon ahead of his arraignment tomorrow in Manhattan Criminal Court. We're going to get the latest on that and much more at 7 o'clock. Stay with us.
This is Marketplace. I'm Rima Chreis. UFC, or Ultimate Fighting Championship, is known for its high kicks and punches that take place in a walled octagon, so fighters can't tumble out. WWE, or World Wrestling Entertainment, is known for its body slams and costume matches that take place in a square ring. Wrestlers tumble out quite often. The difference is that UFC fights are not scripted, while WWE is more of like a storyline entertainment. And now these two brands are merging. They announced they are forming a new, yet-to-be-named public company worth more than $21 billion. Marketplace's Stephanie Hughes takes a look at the match.
John Knoip has been a fan of UFC for 15 years. He's a former high school wrestling coach in southern Arizona, and two of his students became UFC fighters.
I'm just fascinated with the athleticism that I see, and on any given day, everyone's beatable.
Knoip doesn't have much time for WWE, and in the Venn diagram of people who like UFC and people who like WWE, there is very little overlap. But some athletes have been in both.
Introducing the challenger, the baddest woman on the planet, Rowdy Ronda Rousey!
Ronda Rousey had been a UFC champion. She's now a WWE star. She and many other athletes have big social media followings. This merger is an opportunity to bring all the fans of one to the other, says Brandon Ross, a media analyst at Lightshed Partners. For example, during a WWE match,
bring a UFC fighter on, have them do a little bit of a skit just to drum up interest.
But there could be brand confusion, worries UFC fan John Knoip.
People might think that WWE must be the real thing when it's not.
Some staples of WWE will remain. Vince McMahon's family has run the company since its inception. He's the majority shareholder, but stepped down as CEO last summer. This deal makes him executive chairman of the new company. I'm Stephanie Hughes for Marketplace.
And now on to another story about an industry wrestling for our attention. Over in the UK, despite all the economic gloom, the movie-making industry has been thriving, and that's mostly because of increasing investment from the U.S. In fact, there's been so much of it over the last few years that, on occasion, there have been more Hollywood blockbusters being filmed in the U.K. instead of here in Hollywood. But this, of course, is not without controversy. From London, Marketplace's Stephen Beard reports.
The transformation has been, well, magical.
Did you ever make anything happen? Anything you couldn't explain?
Almost as if someone had waved a wand.
You're a wizard, Harry.
I'm a what?
J.K. Rowling insisted that the Hollywood movies about her boy wizard be shot in the UK, and that's helped turn a medium-sized industry into a leviathan gobbling up a giant share of global movie making.
The scale is huge. I mean, outside of North America itself, we're probably the biggest country in the world for inward investment, content, production.
Adrian Wooden, head of the British Film Commission, whose job it is to attract foreign movie makers to shoot their films here. The effort is paying off.
We got near £6 billion worth of inward investment last year, which is the biggest figures on record.
The Potter movies blazed the trail 20 years ago, and many other franchises have since joined this inward invasion.
One day this will be your kingdom.
Lord of the Rings, the Marvel and DC movies, Star Wars, Mission Impossible and many more. To accommodate them all, it's been reported there'll soon be more studio space in the UK than LA. Matt Gallagher runs a film crew recruitment and training business, The Call Sheet. Why does he think the UK turned into such a big draw for the movie makers?
We had world-class crew, we had a brilliant infrastructure, and we also had the tax credits. So it really made it really quite irresistible. So a lot of people have ended up moving here.
Oh yes, the tax credits. You get back more than 20% of the cost of the production either as tax relief or a cash credit. But tax is a sensitive subject, and this relief is, as the Brits would put it, causing a bit of a kerfuffle.
Vengeance.
DC Films, maker of the Batman movies, is just one of many American producers to profit from the relief. Disney is reported to have received more than $250 million in UK tax credits. Some Brits, like Alex Dunnigan of TaxWatch UK, which monitors the tax system for discrepancies, are not entirely happy with this arrangement.
There are positives in that more films are being made in the UK, but it comes with a cost.
Take the cost of Britain's oldest and best-known movie franchise that needs hardly any introduction.
Name? Bond. James Bond.
The last 4 Bond movies, says Dunnigan, have cost the British taxpayer a fortune.
We've had Quantum of Solace, receiving $21 million in tax relief. Skyfall, £24 million tax relief. Spectre, £30 million in tax relief. And most recently, No Time to Die, $47 million in tax relief.
And yet, he says, while the 4 movies grossed around $3 billion at the box office, most of the profit was declared and taxed in the US, where the film rights reside.
Considering that the UK is where it's made, it's UK talent that goes into it, and it's the UK taxpayer that's subsidising it, basically I'd like to see some corporation tax paid on those profits here in the UK.
Adrian Wooten of the British Film Commission brushes the criticism aside. Film tax relief, he says, has helped support a British workforce of 120,000 and bring lots of extra spending into the UK.
The tax credit is amazingly good value for the revenue it generates. For every pound we give out from the Exchequer, we get £8 back.
The British government could be tempted to insist that any company receiving the film tax relief does locate more of their profits in the UK and pay more tax here, but it seems unlikely to do so. In fact, the government is now planning to increase the relief, anxious not to drive foreign movie makers away from the UK and hobble one of its most buoyant industries. In London, I'm Stephen Beard for Marketplace.
This final note on the way out today, saw this in the Chicago Tribune. It is about how none of us can escape inflation, including the tooth fairy. So the original tooth fairy poll, which is a thing, it is from Delta Dental of Illinois. And according to them, 25 years ago, kids were getting on average $1.30 per tooth. Since then, the amount has shot up almost 380%. Which means kids are getting an average payout of $6.23 a tooth. Historically, this tooth fairy poll has mirrored the economy, not so much this year, but estimates do tell us that by 2048, single tooth might be worth up to $30. So basically, if you're a kid listening to this in the backseat, all I'm going to say is it sounds like you have some negotiating power.
Marketplace is supported by SoFi. With a SoFi High Yield Savings Account, members can earn more, plus deposits are FDIC insured. Learn more at SoFi.com. Get your money right. SoFi Bank N.A. member FDIC. And by Viking, exploring the world in comfort. Viking offers a small ship experience with cultural enrichment and destination-focused dining. More at Viking.com.
All right, we got to go, but first, a moment of economic context. We started the show with Justin talking about oil supply and demand. If you're curious, right now, according to AAA, the average price for gas is $3.50. Last year at this time, it was $4.19. Our daily production team includes Levi Burdett, Andy Corbin, Richard Cunningham, Nicholas Guillong, Maria Hollenhorst, Sarah Leeson, and Sean McHenry. And I'm Marie Mefres. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. This is APM.
WNYC supporters include Loud and Live Productions, presenting Gypsy Kings returning to Newark April 30th, 2023 at New Jersey Performing Arts Center. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster.com.
It's WNYC, all things considered.